I'm going to put my pants on. Welcome back to another episode of Back for Our Future, the show that goes back to look at our past, but it also helps us inform about the future. Today is the episode we have been teasing for almost 9 months. Is that roughly right? 6 months, 7 months, whatever it was. We've been teasing this for so long that we are on, maybe this might even end up being 2 parts. We don't know yet till we get done. But this is the episode we've been waiting to talk about. Obviously, we talk a lot about movies and other stuff, specifically from an era in the 90s where Tony and I grew up. But this episode focuses on just one movie. And there's a lot to set this up. There's a lot of stories with this. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot about this film that's very important to us as in our formative years. In all fairness, I can say for me personally, and I don't want to speak for Tony, I probably could, but I feel like this may be the most important movie I ever saw. And I'll list reasons as we go through this, but it is maybe the most important movie I ever saw in my life. It stands alone. Real quick, before we get into it, I wanted to tell you, I watched some videos. So in preparation for this, this is where we had a post from a friend of yours that said they couldn't find the movie anywhere and they bought a VHS, which I thought was absolutely delightful. Some viewers sent that to us. I think it's amazing. Here's a prime example of why that post means something to me. So in prep for the show, I was like, hey, I'm going to go watch this movie. And I'm saving the name to let you tee it up and do your thing. But it's nowhere online to stream. It's not streaming. Oh. So you either have to find a VHS, which we both had, or you have to go get a DVD, or if you've bought it, I guess, digitally, but it is not a streaming thing. And it's one of the challenges that we face on the show. A lot of times we talk about all these movies, but sometimes finding these films, you got to dig for these, or you got to look for them, or you got to try and track them down. Anyway, the reason I say that is because I saw these clips online, and it was pretty telling, of a variety of millennials watching this movie for the very first time, right? And the craziest thing is, just as much, because basically all the millennials said the same thing, the older people in our bracket, whatever, not old, but older, all told them that you have to watch this movie, and they would say it over and over again. And finally, they broke down and watched it, and they all had the same reaction. And that reaction is that it was a very good movie that they related to. And I think it's pretty telling. So, Tony, I will let you do the honors of our favorite movie on this podcast. Take it away, tee it up, what you got to say about this movie.
The movie that we're talking about now, or the movie you were just talking about before?
No, this movie right now, this movie that we're about to talk about.
So, I Married an Axe Murderer. This is, let me tell you, when we were planning this whole podcast, this is the episode that I was planning for the entire time. This one right now.
Right.
I would do research on all the other episodes, and during that evening, I'd start planning this episode. This is it's like in college football when you're playing a team like Alabama A&M or something, and that's the team you're supposed to be prepping for that week, but you're planning for like Ole Miss the next week on the road or something. You know what I mean? One of the bigger teams. Yeah. So this is that episode for us, and I mean, absolutely a life-changing movie for us, without question.
It is. It very much is. The crazy thing is, in terms of commercial success, we've got to say that this movie, starring Mike Myers and Nancy Travis, is technically not a major commercial success when it's released in theaters. Is that fair? Can we give a little history on that side of things? Because he came off of Wayne's World. Is that right?
Yeah. So everyone thought this would be a big hit because he was coming off of Wayne's World, and he had Wayne's World 2 sitting. We'll talk about that movie later in a different episode, but Wayne's World 2 is sitting behind this movie later in 1993. So this was the kind of the middle piece of that puzzle. And so they thought this would be a huge hit. They had a lot of problems on the set, which a lot of the good movies do. So don't ever judge a movie just because it has a lot of issues on sets. Because a lot of the good movies do have a lot of problems on set. So that's not really a telltale. But It didn't do as well. It was a $20 million budget. It did, all told, by the time it got through with domestic and foreign, it did about 27 million, which isn't bad because,
Right.
to be honest with you, this has become like that kind of cult classic type film that people like to call cult classics. And by the time it got through secondary markets and everything else, it was more than profitable. So I mean, that was so. In theory, it made money. It certainly wasn't a smash hit. It came out. We've talked about some of the other movies that came out because we wanted to save this one for one episode. We missed talking about all the movies together. Rising Sun comes out on this day with Sean Connery and Wesley Snipes.
Which we,
That
which
right?
we,
You
yeah.
obviously
Oh yeah.
that. And and your mom's saying, "Please stop talking about it." And then Tom and Jerry came out on this day, and there's other, there's a couple movies. So it kind of got lost in the shuffle, which we've talked about a little bit here and there. Didn't get lost with us. Got lost with some other people.
So let me tell a few things I know about the movie because I think it's important that we before we jump into the relationship to it, I think to set the stage of this film, there's a few things that I think are interesting. In those same millennial videos, those same individuals, these young people were sitting there saying that they've heard these quotes before, but didn't know exactly which movie it was from. Now, Cerberus and Axe Murderer, for our generation, and I believe it is very specific to our generation, is an extremely quotable movie on the level of like Anchorman, as far as like in my circle of people. It
Absolutely.
is highly quotable, right? The heat, get your pants. Now, there's so many pieces through it. So first off, I think it's fascinating that the script is so well written, even though they had turmoil on set, and I guess Mike Myers rewrote it. Is that the correct side
Yeah,
of the
right.
story?
Mike Myers did a rewrite on a lot of this as well. And Thomas Schleim, who was a president of the DGA, which is my union.
Yikes!
He is now, where he has been. Um, yeah, I mean, he was a very good director, and he would do a lot of TV after this. But him and Mike had some problems and squabbles and things like that. But yeah, I mean, that was the issue.
Yeah. So what I find fascinating with Sorry Married an Axe Murderer is that we get some things. You get to see some characters. Well, let me backtrack. There's a couple things that happen. First off, Mike Myers at this point, in terms of Cinema Land, has really only played one character, which was an adaptation from his Wayne's World. So it's an adaptation from SNL, and so now we kind of get to see Mike Myers as Mike Myers, as the everyman, and we never really see it again. I don't think we
Sure.
ever really see it again. I think from that point he plays a lot of characters, but that's also what I think makes the movie last, is that if you don't know who he is and you get to see this version of Mike Myers down the road, you're suddenly, talking about now, like when someone, they're like, oh my God, he's because he's charming and funny and all that. But even more telling to me is the characters that he plays in this, and some of the bits we get out of him in this lay the groundwork for some of the biggest movies in the history of cinema, right? Which I would argue that him playing his father, his Scottish father, gives a Shrek. There's no way around it.
That's 100% correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely
Um,
that question.
I mean, it's hands down. I would say that even some of the stuff from Austin Powers, there's a little cheeky nods throughout this that
Yes.
some of the stuff he says in these characters and some of the writing definitely informs Austin Powers later on. And we're talking about two franchises that are some of the biggest box office, regardless of whether you love them or hate them. They're huge movies. Those, you get to see them get born, more or less, or conceived, if you will, to make it oddly weird, in this film. You also get to see, the development of Anthony LaPaglia become much more of because later on he takes on more serious roles as a cop,
Yeah,
and
right.
he ends up, and you get to see the birth of that. You get this gag with Alan Arkin, who you understood it better to me. And in fact, I remember. I don't want to go too much in memory yet. I don't want to keep it, but I do remember one element. You explained some of the jokes to me because I didn't fully get some of the Alan Arkin jokes, and you knew them and you told them to me, which made them 10 times more funnier or more funny when you watch the film. I guess my point in saying this is, as much as this film is a foundation for us, I think it's a foundation for Mike Myers' career in a lot of ways because of all these insanely great characters that come from it. Minus the Pentaveret, that was okay, but the rest of the stuff that comes from it is pretty good. What's your take on that? What's your take on that kind of idea?
As far as what you were talking about was as far as the Shrek and all
Yeah,
that. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I 100% agree. I mean, you can see it. It's first of all, this is the first time Mike Myers is doing all these multiple characters. Obviously outside of SNL, but I mean, as far as a movie in a theatrical, and yeah, I mean, you're seeing all that, and he'll take all those elements later on, and he'll use them for these other movies. He's doing that. I mean, that's fair to say without question. And obviously, Shrek. I mean, the voices are very similar when
yeah.
you movie side to side. And as far as Austin Powers, I mean, without question, I mean, he plays multiple characters in those movies, and that's something he's probably learned not just from here, but from his SNL days too. I mean, I think the fact that he would do that on SNL is what brought it here to begin with, and
Right.
then of course bringing it from here in a theatrical setting to all those other movies that you would see later on, which is all the Austin Powers movies, even Love Guru and stuff like that. Which wasn't a hit, but still a movie that he would do later on. So I think that's absolutely fair, and I mean the jokes are great in this movie, all from start to finish. There's a joke right at the start of the movie, and then it goes all the way to the end, and then also the casting in this movie is just beyond brilliant, and there's so many cameos and so many wonderful iconic characters. That's what makes the movie so great.
It really is. It's an example of filmmaking of not necessarily taking crazy risks, but taking ideas and letting the film serve its purpose and the story serve its purpose and casting correctly and not just stunt. There's no stunt casting in this. It's not like I love Deadpool and Wolverine, but there's a lot of stunt casting in that. Meaning, they put stunt casting is an industry term, by the way. That doesn't mean stunt players. For you guys out there that might not know, stunt casting often refers to when you put a cameo. This has been out for a while, and Wolverine's been out now. I'm sure it's on streaming by the time this episode drops. But
by the time
yeah,
you
yeah.
hear that, it'll be
Yeah,
a long
yeah,
time.
yeah. But I mean, putting Channing Tatum or bringing back Wesley Snipes into the Deadpool Wolverine movie—that's stunt casting. That idea is stunt cast. In this, they didn't stunt cast; they just dropped people in, and you have these cameos. One of the greatest that I have probably said 1,000,000 times in my life is the Vicky line, which is delivered by the late great Phil Hartman,
He's wonderful.
and
Great.
oh my God, that whole scene. It makes no sense in the movie, but it is so perfect to be there. It's every aspect of it is perfect. But
But how many
those
times
kind of things. Yeah.
Charles Grodin?
Oh,
Charles
a
Grodin,
million.
times we use that line.
A million. A million times.
He's wonderful.
And then you get Stephen Wright. I mean, it is just
Yep. Michael
the
Richards.
cameo. Michael Richards is great in the newspaper. It's just it's so many little moments that are just, and they're so seamless in the film that they don't. And I'm not making, again, to preface it, I enjoyed Deadpool and Wolverine, but where they served up the cameos is like on a platter to you. These are just little characters that pop in. They're not served up on a platter. They're just part of the environment. And that's what I think makes my love for the movie stick even stronger, is the fact that when these other actors appear, mostly comedians, when they appear, it's a little moment. It's not like hey, look at this big budget we spent on Tom Cruise dressed up playing the crazy guy in Tropic Thunder. Instead, it's the other way around. It's like, it's just a subtle little gag that's just funny as all get out.
Yep, absolutely, without question.
So let's talk about how one more piece of this, and we'll lead into how we found this movie, because I think that's a great story to kind of kick it all off. I also went back and watched the trailer. And what I mean by the trailer is I'd never seen this one before. It's where Mike Myers is like sitting, having people do his hair and makeup. Have you seen this trailer in a while?
It's been a minute since I've seen it, but I know exactly what trailer you're talking about.
It was the theatrical trailer, and it's so old school and almost odd in the tone of it, because you don't see trailers like that. Certainly even in that, it was almost like the trailer itself was a Mike Myers joke, like he pitched it like a skit, and that's what it feels like. But at the end of that trailer, the reason I bring it up, Nancy Travis shows up in that red dress,
Yeah.
and she is so stunning in that sequence. And they're doing a hard sell on making you believe that she's the murderer. They do such a great job on bringing her in and teeing it up, and she looks so fantastic. But I just wanted to bring up, like, that's a very obscure movie. That's a very obscure trailer if you just listen to the title and you don't know exactly what's going on. So how in the hell does I guess I was 14 no, I was 15, you were 16, or 14 and
Yeah,
16?
I was 16. Yeah, I think you were about 14.
Yeah, cuz you drove us there. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Okay. So how does a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old go find this damn movie to begin with?
So, very funny. So, we had seen a trailer for this. There were trailers throughout the summer, like early on and stuff like that. You and I saw a trailer for it um, at Hot Shots Part Two,
Oh, there we
and
go.
that was, but we kind of just let it go. We're like, oh, that looks cool. It was, because they showed some of the cameos and stuff like that. And they're all right, great. And you're just kind of like, that's it. We went about our day watching the Hot Shots and going to Subway and everything else, and that was the end of that. But here's what happens. So we're sitting there playing football on the streets of Charlotte Oaks one day in the hot summer, and we had just got done doing some movies. Obviously, we had gone to see Hot Shots and stuff like that, and we were going to go see Rising Sun. And I said, man, we should go, do what we did when we saw Hot Shots. Just you and I go and have like lunch or something like that, and go see a movie. And you're like, yeah, we should go. I really want to see this movie, So I Married an Axe Murderer. That was your comment. I really want to see this movie, So I Married an Axe Murderer, because I was just at Camelot Music and I bought the soundtrack. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I haven't heard that. Well, the soundtrack comes out 3 days before the movie. It's just like kind of standard. They would come out a few days before the movie. And so that came out on the 27th. Like, I just bought this soundtrack. And I said, oh, is it good? And he was like, yeah, man, it's really good. It's got a lot of alternative music on it, which was kind of the thing. We loved to listen to a lot of 90s alternative music. And so, we're just out there playing and go about our day. And then you're like, hey, come on up and listen to the soundtrack. And I was like, yeah, let's go ahead and listen to the soundtrack. So I would go upstairs and listen to the soundtrack. And we start listening from the very first song, and we're about to go over them, but all these songs. But we started listening, and of course, I didn't get to hear the whole soundtrack because you've already earmarked songs you hate on this soundtrack. So
Two Princes is one of those.
What's that?
The Spin Doctors has definitely got to be one of those.
So I'm merely getting to hear the songs that you like, which granted, they're all great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they're all amazing, but I'm not hearing the entire soundtrack at this point. I never hear the entire soundtrack until I go buy the soundtrack, because after hearing it, I wanted it. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how we began in this quest, because you bought the soundtrack, and the funny thing about the story is you went to Camelot Music and you talked to the guy with the hair, with the crazy hair, and I don't know his name because I think I want to say it's Doug or something like that, but I don't really know his name because he's not really a guy I hung out with or anything like that. He's just a guy working at a store, okay? And so, but we would talk to you every once in a while, and he pointed you into the direction of this soundtrack, correct?
Yep, that's accurate. Yeah, what I remember is that I went in there wanting to buy, I just had whatever it was. I was 15, 14 and had money to buy a record or an album. And just to set this up for those of us that remember and those that may not, it was very important to us. Back then, you didn't have Spotify and streaming and all this way. It was very difficult to share music. You either, this is pre-ripping CDs even, either you ripped it to a cassette or you would have somebody tell you about it. So we trusted the record store employees, I did anyway, to ask them about new alternative. And I think it being that time frame, we were maybe watching some 120 minutes, but I know for a fact we were watching a lot of Alternative Nation. Sure. And so probably went in and said, hey, look, I like alternative music. And I loved compilations. I still do to this day. I think they're great. I love the variety of music. And I think that's where streaming works well for me. But back then, you didn't have that option. So I think I remember him turning it to his... And now this is back when they came in those big, freaking stupid cardboard sleeves and the whole fiasco. And then he pointed me to that soundtrack. And what I remember looking on the back, I think the band that pulled me in, it was two actually. The first one was Soul Asylum because I did like them and I knew them, especially because they were a little bit edgier in some spots, and we'll talk about that. And then the other one was this guy there mentioned Ned's Atomic Dustbin to me,
Right.
Because, yep, he said, "Oh, you like heavy." Yeah, and I never heard Ned's before. They might have been on 120 minutes, but they weren't in the rotation of Alternative Nation that I remember.
No, not
And
right.
so I just right, is that right?
Yeah, they were definitely not on Alternative Nation all the time. They were on 120. Yeah.
Because they were much more of a college band, so I felt like I was getting this new stuff and all this stuff. I don't remember if Toad the Wet Sprocket, if their album had ever come out yet. I don't remember because I feel like this is the first time I ever heard them.
Fear came out. All I Want, Walk on the Ocean.
Okay.
That was already out. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I recognized them probably at that point because they were pretty popular. Anyway, so yes, that's the story of the album. Brought it back. We listened to it. I don't remember which songs I skipped, but I just listened to it today.
I'll tell you.
Oh, here we go.
Yep.
Here we go. Here we go. I probably still skipped them when I listened. I literally listened to it this morning. I got to tell you guys, if you've never heard the soundtrack, it's worth listening to because it's a good soundtrack. It really is. It holds up really well. The crazy thing is, it's really a quick listen. It's not a very long soundtrack. I think it's 10 or 11 songs, maybe.
Yeah, it's. It's 12 songs and it's about 39
songs.
long.
Yeah,
It's, only
it's
39
short.
long, so it's really short. It's not long at all. No, it's great. You want to go over the songs?
Let's do it. I'm
So we're
excited
going
to
to go
see.
over the songs from start to finish,
Okay.
from the very first song to the very last song. And it's not a perfect soundtrack, as you're going to figure out, because there's songs on it that we don't love by any means. And then I want to play a little game after that.
Okay.
I want to see how we could make the soundtrack perfect.
Oh, interesting.
Because there are songs that appear in the movie that don't appear on the soundtrack and stuff like that. I want to try to play a game of reversal and replace and stuff like that. So
love it.
All right.
Love it.
So let's start out with the first song in the movie. It's the very first song on the soundtrack. It's the very first song you hear when the credits roll. And it takes us through this big, long Steadicam shot, and it's an iconic shot in this film. And starts off with the very first joke about the coffee cup and everything else. And that's the Boo Radley's "There She Goes."
Right, which is as iconic of a song. Anytime I hear that, specifically their version, because there's a difference you'll get to later, but whenever I hear their version, I can literally see the opening credits. I see Jack Kerouac Street, which we'll talk about later. I will say, just as a side note to this, in that sequence, as Tony's talking about the Steadicam, there's the coffee cup shot. We did a project together, the Virgin Mattress, which was an ad campaign for... And we replicated that shot, except with the beer, but we replicated that shot to a T, 100%. The very opening Ceremony Axe Murder, I replicated it when we did that project together, and we got that beer shot. It's exactly the same shot. Somebody grabs it. No one says, I ordered a large, but it was close to it. Yeah, all right, so Boo Radley's, one of the best songs on the soundtrack, in my opinion. Probably the one... Ooh, that's tough. We'll go through the rest. Let's keep going.
I say it's a perfect song. I mean, you're not even. You always will tell people all the time that you're not a nostalgic person.
Yeah,
you know that all the time, and I think even when you hear this song, you're nostalgic.
Oh no, it does. There's no way around it. Listening to it this morning on the way to the bike park, which is not necessarily ramp you up to go do some crazy stunts on your bike kind of music, but that's what I listened to on the way. That song still the whole time. I mean, I can't help, and I'm singing every word.
Yeah.
Which is also what happens when I listen to the soundtrack. Even the songs I hate, I still know the words for some damn reason. It's wacky.
So we agree that song is amazing, and that's how
100%.
that's how you started the soundtrack off. You let me hear that song, and then the next song was "Toad the Wet Sprocket Brother."
Yep.
Which is the
Did
song.
I skip that?
No, you did not skip it.
Okay.
No, you didn't skip it. You let me hear it. You like Toad the Wet Sprocket. You love this. You liked this song a bunch. And this is the song. It plays when they're on the bend of the road, she grabs them and they almost go off the road and that's the song
Yeah.
that's playing on that drive, which I think this song is amazing. It's one of the longest songs on the. It's the longest song. Well, it's about the longest song on the CD, but terrific song.
But it's a flawless song, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I have a rule since man, I could get emotional about it. I have a rule since that time frame. I will, if I come across a Toad song, whether it's listening to streaming or in Sirius or whatever, I will not skip it in honor of you. I've never skipped a Toad song. Anytime it plays, even if I catch the last 10 seconds, I just listen to the last 10 seconds. But I will not skip a Toad the Wet Sprocket song because, and this song's called Brother, so it meant a lot to me, but I will not skip it. To this day, I still don't skip a Toad the Wet Sprocket song whenever I hear it, just in, whether I've talked to you or not, good or bad, I will not skip it just in honor of Tony Nick Najati.
Now, I appreciate that, and it is appropriate that a song called Brother is on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
But it's an amazing song. It would pop up on other Toad albums as well, and I know they play it all the time. I've seen the band many times live. This is what starts my absolute love of this band. I was a big fan of All I Want and Walk in the Ocean. I love that album, but this starts it, and then the next year they're going to release another iconic album that we're going to talk about when we get to it. But in 1994, but this band easily becomes my number one. And
it's very quick.
And I'm a big heavy music lover and a big older music lover and stuff like that. But all of a sudden, this band jumps to my number one very fast.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think, like I told you, that's why I've never skipped it. Because if someone were to say Tony Nick Najati, name a band, if that was the game, I would immediately be like Toad the Wet Sprocket. I don't even have to think about it. It just comes out of my mouth. I mean, there's others, yes, but that one,
right?
There's another one on this list that I would almost say is one of your big bands for a period.
We're getting to it. So the third song is Soul Asylum: The Break.
Now listen, I can sing. I don't know what to tell you about this song other than I don't know if I skipped it, but I know every word. Okay, I didn't think so. I knew every. This morning, I have not listened to this album, in fairness. I have not listened to it as the album in a very long time. And that song came on, and I literally, just like Brother, I can sing every single word, and that's rare for me because I can't remember lyrics for shit. But I knew every single lyric all the way down through that, and I still will randomly sing the beginning. Just on something will trigger it in my brain, and I'll sing it. It's a very impactful song. I love that song. But I also never realized, to me, I forget his name, Dave something maybe, but the singer sounds...
Perner.
What is it?
Dave Perner.
Dave Perner. He sounds like a mixture in this song specifically, and I question to believe that probably the rest of their albums. He sounds like a mixture to me of Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan. When I go back and listen to this song specifically, having aged a little bit in music and paid a little more attention, there are reminiscent moments where he sounds Bruce Springsteen-y. There's moments where he sounds Bob Dylan-y. And now I get why his tone was probably so sought after, because that's two iconic musicians, and he kind of has his own style, but they're reminiscent of those two guys, which I thought was great.
Yeah, no, it's a great song, and obviously you did not skip this. You were a big Soul Asylum fan, especially. I mean, I liked him too, but I mean this was one of your like alternative bands at the time for sure, and you loved it. This is a side note. I've seen Soul Asylum quite a few times live since this album came out. You know me. I've seen them at some very intimate venues where there's been like maybe just a few hundred people, and I was very close to them. I have tried to get them to play this song so many times. They will not play this live. I do not know why. It's a very good song, but they've had some other big albums, so I guess they try to stick to that material. I don't know. They will not play this song live, and it really, really, really kind of irritates me. But that's okay. It happens.
I hear you. Yeah, it's a good track. It's really a good one. It's a good song in their catalog for sure.
So here is the first song that you do skip.
Oh boy.
I did not get to hear this song for a very long time. Well, not very long time, maybe a week, because I own the soundtrack pretty quickly. And it's Chris Whitley, Starved to Death.
Yeah, not
number
a fan.
4 song. It's a very weird song. So it's it's not like any of the other songs on the album. It's very melodious and it's got a very deep, dark approach to it, which I guess can kind of fit the dark comedy, but there's no light on it at all, and it's very out of place. I feel like it's out of place, and over the years, I think I like this song better than you do because over the years I've stopped skipping it and just listened to it, but but it's definitely in the middle of this. It's in the middle of like 6 songs that are iconic for this album, and then this song just got dropped in the middle of it, and
Right.
it is really out of place because the song that comes up after it is like way more upbeat, and so
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of like going to a concert and the band plays 3 iconic songs, and then they go, okay, we're gonna play our brand new song that no one's ever heard, and then nobody cares. And then they played 3 more great songs.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, it's great.
Why did they do that for 4 or 5 minutes? We didn't need that.
Yeah, that's
You're not a
great.
fan of this. I don't. Are you? Are you a fan of the song now?
No, God, no. I still don't like. I skipped it.
You skip it today?
I skipped it today. I sure did. Actually, I had to go to YouTube to find it because when you stream this, there's some songs missing from the album. There's
Okay.
also the This Poem Sucks is not on the album when you
Gotcha.
stream it. Yeah, so Chris Whitley, I had to go pull it up because I looked at the original album list and then compared it to Spotify, and I had to go find that song on YouTube. I was like, because I didn't really remember it, and then I played it. Oh, I remembered it. Oh, I remembered it.
So the next song is a huge one. It's Big Audio Dynamite 2, Rush, the New York City Club version. I mean, they obviously had a different version on their original album. This is we get a remix type song. It's amazing. It plays inside the butcher shop, and it's a great montage scene, and the song's playing the entire time. It's really a great scene. I mean, we both love this song. You obviously didn't skip this. You love this song.
So what's interesting is I later on, and you'll find a theme because I can draw so many. It's like if you had one of those big boards where there's like a pinpoint in the middle and you have all the strings coming up. I can draw so many connections to my life. I, at the time, didn't know. Gosh, I just blanked on his name. What's the lead singer of the Clash's name? That's also the singer of Big Auto Dynamite.
Mick Jones.
Mick Jones. Right. So I had no idea that this was Mick Jones, right? I had no clue. I think you had maybe mentioned it to me, but I'd never heard The Clash. I didn't even really know, or if I had, I'd probably heard Rock the Casbah, but I didn't know who it was. Later on, in probably, gosh, I've been on tour with the Bloodhound Gang, so 96, 97,
Yeah.
I get really into ska, and part of that is because of the fact that I knew who Mick Jones was at this point. He was from The Clash. The Clash just reinforced my ska obsession and all that. But it all starts with this song. Like I can trace it back to my origins in ska, my first taste of, even though the song is not ska whatsoever.
Sure.
Mick Jones has such a draw in that world that it led me to understanding punk rock and a whole lot more. So it's a gateway song for me. It's important.
No, it's great. It's a wonderful song. Like I said, it plays in a fun little montage scene. It's about a 4 minute song, and so it's kind of one of the longer songs on the album. And then after that is it's part of the movie, and they do the Mike Myers "This Poem Sucks."
Yep.
And these were always really iconic. When this movie came out, and during this summer, I mean, I still do, but I mean, I'm not gonna do them on the air. But I knew all the poems from this entire movie. I know all the lines from this movie, but I knew all the poems. Like I could just verbatim just start singing them to you. And this was obviously one of them. It's on the soundtrack too. There's a lot of poetry in the movie. If you haven't seen it, I mean, but I knew all the poems, all of them. And for all my unfortunate friends and family members, they had to listen to me say the poems a lot.
We got to talk about this for 1 second because it sets up something. Look, it's the fact that in many ways, the fact that you knew all of them in our circle of friends was a little bit of a circus was like a was like a circus act because it'd be like Tony, this one. We could just lead it in, and you could just recite them. I think most of us knew, Harriet, Harriet. I mean, we all because that's on this soundtrack,
Yeah,
and.
yeah.
To this day, somebody will say something, and I will, under my breath, be like, "Hard-hearted harbinger of haggis." Like I can still kick those. I remember every word to it. I said it all today, listening to it in the car. But the crazy thing about this, that to tee in a little bit of life history, was I probably wasn't really big into poetry. I knew who like Emerson and stuff was. We were probably studying that a little bit in high school. But I wasn't super big into poetry until this movie because he's doing poetry that wasn't, it didn't feel like old people stuff. It felt new and hip and it was funny. And so literally my foray into poetry, which later on affects me as a screenwriter and other things. It's my creative writing starts with that sequence of him doing these poems is literally what gets me interested in that. And later on, we would have poetry readings and all this stuff at a place called Papa Dooley's,
Right.
which,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, the reason that we went to Papa Dooley's is because not only did they have these great poetry scenes in the movie, they all happened at a coffee house. It was the only coffee house we had access to that was hip. And even though it really wasn't that hip of a coffee house, but it was for us. And so Soy Brain Axe Murderer, poetry, and coffee. My love of coffee. And I roast my own coffee now. I'm a coffee snob. I'm an a-hole coffee person. All of it, of my life at 46 years old, starts when I'm 14, seeing this movie, listening to the soundtrack, reinforces that over and over again. Literally can draw a straight line back to it. I remember the first time I ever tried a cappuccino, it was disgusting. And then I learned to love it. So it's just kind of interesting.
It's funny that you brought that part of it up because I'm not a coffee drinker, and
No.
I haven't had caffeine since the '90s. And and I know there's decaf. I know there's decaf. I don't want to hear anybody talk. Nobody should send me a message about decaf coffee. I know it exists. I don't drink it. So anyway, the only maybe 3 times I've had coffee in my life was because of this damn movie.
Yep.
And going to Papa Dooley's. And in order
Yep.
to have it, I had to put like all the chocolate stuff into the drink in order to get it to where I even could stomach it. So it's not my thing. But I did like going up to the shops. I don't mind going into like a Starbucks now or anything like that. I mean, that stuff's fine. I just and they have other things now, but I mean, but yeah, I mean, I always like to go in there and stuff like that. And I like the poetry readings and all that hip stuff. But it was fun.
It was a big deal, and I think the culture for us was very much like at this time period of our age group and our friend group, and we should probably talk about it later on, but our friend group did start picking up, and the poetry thing became. This is back in when music had lyrical content that wasn't Taylor Swift's type style of lyrics. This was like thoughtful and really we're coming out of the 70s and 80s where,
Oh yeah,
not all, but you have these really strong lyrics. So we're still pulling lyrics in the grunge movement, the alternative music. They're all pulling lyrics. And so I think it was all part of that same, it all fit together just in this perfect little microcosm that we were all super into it. I cannot remember the guy's name up there, except we called him Scrappy, the guy who owned it. I can see his face.
Wasn't there a lot. So I mean, that's really not my scene. I don't really know who the guy was.
But I do have one story about him, and we'll move on. He once told us a story that he went hog hunting, like he would hunt pigs, wild boar. But he would hunt them by climbing up into a tree and jumping out of a tree with a spear and spearing hogs. That's what this guy did for fun, and he owned a coffee shop. Yeah. If that's not the most 90s thing that you've ever heard, I don't know what to tell you. He would host poetry readings.
Crazy.
It's nuts.
I go to poetry readings and I spear hogs.
It's just the weirdest. Anyway. No, it's a great soundtrack so far. Yeah, so we got This Poem Sucks or whatever it's called on the soundtrack. Yeah. I can't remember what they call it.
No, it's called This Poem Sucks, and it's short 2-minute thing. And then it jumps into a really crazy cover song that's amazing from Ned's Atomic Dustbin, covering the Bay City Rollers Saturday Night. And you gotta listen to the Bay City Rollers version of Saturday Night. And then you gotta listen to this thing.
Yep.
They're two totally different sounding songs, and they're both absolutely amazing. They're both absolutely amazing songs. As a matter of fact, I was in the car with my dad coming back from Kansas City a couple weeks ago, a few weeks ago, and the Bay City Rollers one came on the radio because we had it on the '70s station, which I love to listen to the '70s station. And that song came on, and I love that song so much. So this was a really great addition to the soundtrack. You obviously didn't skip this one. This is an amazing
No.
band.
But I'll tell you,
amazing.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember we were all obsessed because they had two bass players. I remember all these little details that were just so unique to us. And are they Scottish or they're foreign
Yeah,
English speakers?
and by the way, they still have they're English, but yeah,
English.
they still have music. They still release songs here and there. So it's kind of cool. I mean, they're amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. And I hadn't listened to them a ton before getting this soundtrack.
Same.
And
Right.
you had, and so I become obsessed with As Dumb Dustbin.
Yeah.
I mean, I have
Yeah.
after that I have T-shirts, stickers. I'm a member of their fan club. I mean, they're amazing. I have all the albums now. I have all the rarities. Because rarities were a big thing in '90s. I have all that stuff. They're absolutely one of my all-time favorite bands. They still are. They're amazing. I love this song. I remember it. I don't know if you've ever seen it. You can probably dig it up somewhere. There's a video for this song.
Is there really?
It really is. There's a music video for Dead Atomic Dustbin Saturday Night, and it has the characters from Soy Mary Naxbar. It's for the movie, and I remember seeing it as part of the promotion on Friday Night Videos when that was
Wow.
a long time ago.
Wow.
I would definitely do those now, and so yeah, Friday Night Videos, and I saw that soundtrack, and I saw this song on there and from the soundtrack, and I was like, oh man. And that's like right before. We saw this movie.
That's incredible. I got to tell you, like, this song is a banger. It's still a banger. It's great. It is not at all like the original, and I didn't know that. So when I heard the original, I knew you had heard the original before, but I had not. And when I went to listen to the original, it was a skipper.
Oh no, really?
Yeah. Well, no, not now. Not now. Now I love it, but back then you got to think, man. Remember, I was very much like, if it didn't fit this little window, I was like, no, that sounds like my parents' music.
You're definitely far more diverse than you were back in the '90s.
100%, 100%. Yeah. I've grown into a lot more music, but yeah, it is this one's a banger, and back then to me the original was a skipper for sure, for sure.
So this song right here at the time, it was kind of a almost skipper. It was like you liked it, but you didn't want to listen to all 4 minutes of it. And it's a good song. Like I like it a lot. I think you probably like it more now than you probably did then. But it's the Darling Buds' "Long Day in the Universe."
So now this morning I was like, why did I ever not, like, in my brain it was like, did I not like this song? Because I was thinking about it. It's a great song. Long Day. I remember it. I remember it clear.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's it. That's all I was gonna say.
No, I mean, it's a great song, and I mean, it was one of those things you're like, it's a good song, but we're not going to listen to all of it. I was like, okay, that's fine. That makes perfect sense. But it is a good track, but it's one of the longest tracks on the CD. The next one is the Spin Doctors, Two Princes.
I skipped the shit out of that. I know I did.
Yeah, you were so. As I remember the whole thing with the Spin Doctors with you, you were not a huge fan. I liked them a lot better than you did, and I liked the song, but you were like, okay, you've heard this a million times already, so I'm not going to play. And that was why you skipped it. It wasn't necessarily you absolutely hated it, but as I remember. And I remember this pretty well. You didn't like this band all that much then, but after we see the film, you like this band better.
No, that's true. I because I had a memory that was good to attach to it. But the problem I had with the Spin Doctors, and still do, is this weird ongoing burned in my brain onset of the fact that this song had been played on rotation 6 billion times. And what was happening was, if I remember correctly, it would show up on Alternative Nation or 120 Minutes in place of a song. I'd like to see something new, not the same old stupid song. And I think that's where my bitterness came towards it. But once I had it associated with the movie, because it's a nice little scene where it plays, once it was associated with the movie, it worked for me.
No, absolutely. And, it's funny because, so I had AOL. I'll have AOL, not in 93 as much, but 95. And the bass player for this band, Spin Doctors, Mark White, he had his AOL instant messenger handle on the album in the liner notes of the
No
album.
way.
No, he sure did. And I would hit him up, Mad Mark 77, and I would hit him up and talk to him all the time. And he was very, very nice guy. He would get back to me, and he would talk to me all the time. And so once I had AOL and I was a fan of this band, I found that. No, it's very small. It's very fine print down there in these liner notes. But I read it and I found him, and I would talk to him all the time. And of course AOL it's one of the things I'm nostalgic about. AOL Instant Messenger is gone now, and
Yep.
I wish it were not, but it's gone and it's been replaced by a lot of other things. I know everyone's going to say that, but that's fine. But I still talk to him, and I just did a couple weeks ago. I still talk to him on Instagram now.
Oh, that's insane! What a wild thing!
Isn't that crazy? And
Yeah.
And he's still a very nice guy. He's still great. He's still very, very open with his time to talk to fans that he has never actually physically met. But yeah, he's a wonderful guy, and we talk about all kinds of different stuff, a lot of music, and he's into cars, he's into all kinds of stuff. But he's not in the band anymore, and there's a whole bitter thing about why that's happened recently. I'm not going to get into it because it's kind of political and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, so awesome.
Holy cow! What a crazy scenario to be this young person on because it wasn't like Facebook or Instagram where you could just chat anybody. It wasn't DMs. You had to know their handle in order to reach them. It was like CB radio, essentially.
I don't know how many other people he talked to on it, but he always got back to me right away. He always talked to me right away, so it was great.
Oh, so man, what a bygone era of greatness. Well,
yeah, you could just see their name pop up in the screen, and you could just message them. It was wonderful.
Oh, that's killer. That's so killer.
The song you was a skipper for you. It's Suede, my insatiable one. I think it plays well into the soundtrack. It's definitely not the best song. It kind of plays well, but it would be something that I would say is like the 11th best song on the soundtrack.
Yeah, I tried to listen to it today because I remembered it, and I skipped it. I got about a minute and a half to 2 minutes into it. It's not is it a 4-minute song, 3.5, something like that?
Yeah, it's like 3 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't even do it. I just was like, I just don't care for that song whatsoever. And I tried, but I just couldn't do it.
So the next song is Sun 60, Maybe Baby.
I actually like this song now.
You were not a huge fan of this song back in the day. This was a skipper for you then. But now this is a pretty good song.
It's a great song. In fact, it made me want to go back and listen to other stuff by them. So like I noted it in my Spotify playlist to go back and listen to just because I found it interesting. It was like maybe I overlooked this because I was so getting into heavier punk rocky, edgier stuff, and this was a little more mellow, but it's very thoughtful. It's a very thoughtful song, and it's composed really well. The song is great. So now I'm a fan.
I 100% agree with everything you just said about this song. You're right. And then the last song on the soundtrack is the original version, the Laws version of There She Goes. It's the original version. The Boo Radleys was a cover. This is the original version. This has been played quite often. When this song gets played in other TV shows and movies, this is the version they use, and this is the version you usually hear. Like if you're walking around the store or something, this is usually
Yep.
the one you hear.
Well, somebody else covered it though, didn't they? Didn't somebody later in the 2000s do a cover
Yeah.
of this?
So Sixpence None the Richer will
That's it.
cover those as well. It's been covered a few times, but yeah, it's just a wonderful song overall. I mean, I love this version as well, and would go back and buy some of the Law stuff, and I think it's great. I think it's a great way to end the CD. To be honest with you,
It's an interesting idea. I was thinking about this earlier. What an interesting idea to bookend. Now in the film, it ends with the song as well, does it not?
yes,
Is it
Yes, it
this
does.
version or is it Boo Radley's version?
no, it's this version.
So think about this, what we know as producing now. They paid for two separate licenses for the same song. So the Laws got double the money, baby, because they got a licensing for the writing of the song, and then they got a recording license both times. It is very interesting. I do remember there being a small amount of discussion, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember there being a small amount of discussion of which version we liked better. Was that ever something that you remember?
Yeah, we did. We talked about it because the Boo Radley's version, when you hear it, the Laws is very melodic,
Yep.
and Boo Radley's a little more upbeat, and it's shorter too. It's not as long. Boo Radley's is like 24 seconds shorter. So
Yeah.
it's a little shorter, and probably because they fit the whole entire song into that Steadicam shot. So I'm assuming that's the reason, that part of
Oh, yeah.
it. Right? But yeah, I mean, we did, and I remember you saying you like the Boo Radley's version better then when we had this conversation. It's been a while since we had it, but I think we
Yep.
both were we leaned Boo Radley's then, both of us. But I do like both versions a lot.
I do.
I even like the Sixpence None the Richer version, to be honest with you. So I mean, I'm pretty good on that too.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, I'm gonna say that I like them all, just like you did. And it comes from the fact that I always respect the Laws version because they wrote the damn thing, and it's such a great song. It's a classic song, and that tells you, if it's been covered this many times, that tells you what kind of classic song it is, right? I mean, it's just that good. It is like you said, it's a short, quick listen, which is fascinating because it feels almost more modern than it did 93. And what I mean is, like, 39-minute playlist is pretty quick, and that fits more into the modern aesthetic of, like, we have attention spans of gerbils.
Right.
If you look at some of these other soundtracks that have come out where they're, like the Judgment Night soundtrack's long. That's a long soundtrack. But you look at some of these other ones, even that came out in the same window, but a lot of them, they're long, full plays, get upwards of an hour. This one just flows through. And just like the energy of the movie, the soundtrack carries the energy of the film for the most part. I still would agree with you about Chris Whitley, but it carries the energy for the most part throughout it, which I think is a great thing. And it makes listening to the soundtrack and the movie much better when they're joined very, very, very well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to play a little game because what songs would you replace, and what can we replace them with, real quick?
All right, so Suede is gone. Suede's out. They're gone
Suede
right
out.
away.
I assume Suede and Chris Whitley are the two.
Yeah, those two both go away 100%.
Yeah. Are there any others?
Only if it was an issue of, if it's a straight swap issue. Yes, no. I think those two are probably the ones that I would immediately pull because I think there's another spot. What I would like to have
Okay.
is the rendition of Rod Stewart of them singing "Sexy" or whatever the name of the actual song is by Mike Myers as.
We're 100% on the same page. By the way, we've never talked about this.
No, we haven't.
Never
But
talked
that
about
is
already on the same
that
page.
is so good that if you put that on that soundtrack, it would have gone gold because it's so hilariously brilliant.
Really good. So I don't know where to put that exactly, but I would put that. Do you think I'm sexy? Especially the Stuart McKenzie one, because that's what you're talking about, right?
That's 100% what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, that would be in there for sure. If I were replacing the Chris Whitley and the Suede song, I would put that in there for sure.
Yeah.
Without question. Maybe towards the back end, so that way you wouldn't have the two Mike Myers things together, I guess.
Yep.
In an ideal producer world. And then the other one is, and I I'm sure there's a reason why they couldn't do it. I'm sure there's some kind of licensing thing or something like that. And they already did two versions of There She Goes. I would love to have seen the Bay City Rollers make this because
Oh,
that's
that would have been fun.
because the
Yeah.
Bay City Rollers, their version's in the movie.
Yeah, it's the one he sings.
It's when he sings. Stewart puts it on in the movie when
It's so good.
when Charlie goes to the house, and we meet Stewart for the first time, and so it's a big scene, and the Bay City Rollers one's playing, and so it's in the film, and I would have loved to put this on the soundtrack, either that or the other song that I would always say could have been in this too, and it's another one that's sung by the cast. It's Nancy Travis's version of "Only You," the Platters' "Only
Yep.
You," which is very much a big gag in this film.
Yep. Yep. I think only so obviously again we both know probably inside baseball here folks that that's a licensing issue that they couldn't get permission from somebody either on the recording or so when you buy music for movies you have to get two different licenses. One is the recording, which is the actual recorded version of it, and the other is the song itself, right? So they probably couldn't get them both. A lot of times you have to pay the same amount. So let's say it happened to us on Convergence. We wanted a Filter song. Filter wanted $75,000 per side, which makes it or no, that's not right. They wanted $37,500 per side, which made it $75,000, which means they wanted $37,500 for the recording, $37,500 for the freaking music, and that's probably what caused the issue on that side of things. So it makes sense now, but you're totally right. The Only You would have been, even if they didn't do Bay City Rollers, I would argue that we agree on the Rod Stewart bit, but the Only You almost needed to be on the soundtrack. Her version just needed to be on the soundtrack.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I don't know if it's only because of. I mean, I'm positive it's licensing thing too, but I
Yeah.
mean, the only other thing I could think of is maybe the the music supervisor was like, the Platters is a much older band, a much older group. I don't know. Maybe that was also the play in as well because they're trying to do this like more new alternative, 90s alternative stuff and kind of keep it upbeat so that younger folks like us would go buy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's the
fair
only
point.
thing I do. I mean that I don't know the real final answer of it, so I'm trying to play devil's advocate a little bit and try to come up with another reason why that was left off. The other thing that's kind of cool about soundtracks in general, and this is kind of wrap it up for the soundtrack portion of this, but is there's a lot of score in this movie. I mean, there's a lot of
Yep.
things that those are like pop. That's but the pop soundtrack. There's a score that plays throughout the movie. They released a score soundtrack in 2013 for this movie.
Really?
Don't even know that, and they did. Entrada Records released a score soundtrack for this movie. It's like 39 songs long, and it's got a lot of stuff. And Bruce Broden, who conducted and did all this music, he, yeah, I mean his score soundtrack is out there, so you can purchase another So I Married an Axe Murderer soundtrack that has just the score, and of course some of those songs are like 20 seconds long, of course,
Yeah.
because it's just bits of score that's playing. So if you're really into that, and I am, but you can get this.
Holy cow! I'm gonna see if I'm gonna dig around on it because I don't collect a lot of stuff anymore, but I do collect vinyl. But specifically, if it's memorable stuff that I'm into and I want to hear on vinyl, but I actually like to collect soundtracks on vinyl. And so I hope they press this. Maybe they did, but I'm going to see if I can dig for it because that would be amazing to have that
Yeah.
score soundtrack on vinyl to add to my collection.
Yeah.
Very personal record at that point. So that's killer. I did not know that.
No, it's great. I was trying to break. That's new. That's new material, guys. That's new material.
There we go.
There you go. That's breaking news.
Yeah, yeah. Wait just 1 second. Sorry to interrupt, but this episode is so jam-packed. We have so much other stuff to say that we're probably going to break this into a second part. Tony, what do you say?
Oh, we're gonna have to do it, man, because there's just too many stories and there's just too much that we want to say about this movie. because it is the best film, and it is our favorite film. And you're gonna die laughing when you hear this next part, because it is loaded with funny stories and all about your two favorite podcasters.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. There is a story that I am laughing so hard. You probably can't tell. My eyes are red. That's because obviously we broke this up. My nose is stopped up. I laughed harder than I've laughed in forever, and that's in the next episode. So thanks for hanging out with us. We will be back with part 2 of the most important movie of all time, So I Married an Axe Murderer. Tony?
Love it. Stay tuned.